own political evolution. They forget just how radically the civil rights movement shook the U.S. society. After the Civil Rights Act was passed, he emphasized how far the country still was from real justice, asking, what good does it do to sit at a counter when you cannot afford a hamburger or cheese? He was ridiculed for trying to advance the political direction of the movement by calling for more action and dealing directly with economic issues. Martin Luther King knew very well the structures of oppression and how racism, poverty, and war had a stronghold against people of color and non-whites. King believed the second evil which plagued the world is poverty. He states that almost 2/3 of the people of the world go to bed hungry at night. They are undernourished, ill-housed, and shabbily clad. It's obvious that if humanity is to redeem its spiritual moral lag, people must go all out to bridge the social and economic gulf between the haves and the have-nots of the world. Poverty is one of the most urgent items on the agenda of modern life. There is nothing new about poverty, he said. What is new is that now we have the resources to do something about it. He insisted that the rich nations must use their vast resources of wealth to develop the underdeveloped, school the unschooled, and fed the unfed. Now it's interesting that he says this. Not only did he speak of poverty in the US, but notice he speaks of poverty around the entire world. He was already beginning to talk about the Global Poor People's Campaign. The internationalist perspective in his words became more and more colorful as he continued to speak out to the people. The third great evil, he said, is that of war. Recent events, he said, had vividly reminded us that the nations are not reducing their arsenal of weapons of mass destruction. Rather, they're increasing them. The proliferation of nuclear weapons has not been halted. He said, it is, after all, the nation states which have produced the weapons which threaten the survival of mankind and which are both genocidal and suicidal in character. It is as imperative and urgent to put an end to war and violence between nations as it is to put an end to racial justice. Finally, though, after he saw what was happening, he said, as hopeful days become disappointing months, we watch setbacks in the search for peace and advances in the search for military advantage. He went on to say that he had begun to feel guilty about his silence, which I think a lot of us have been through before, which is why we're all here, right? We can't be silent anymore. That's right. Whether right or wrong, I have far too long allowed myself to become a silent onlooker. At best, I was a loud speaker but a quiet actor, while a charade was being performed. He finally decided I had to speak out if I was going to erase my name from the bombs which fall over South and North Vietnam. The time had come, indeed it was past due, when I had to disavow and disassociate myself from those who in the name of peace burn, maim, and kill. In so doing, Dr. King became a hated figure by the white liberal establishment that had previously celebrated him, which they're still doing today. The New York Times trashed him and basically said he was only qualified to talk about black issues, not international ones. He spoke out knowing it would cut off any access to the White House and the Democratic Party. Dr. King, with such a revolutionary voice, spoke of injustice on all fronts. He spoke out against war, poverty, and racism that continues to fuel the oppression in this country even still today. With passion burning inside of him, he was determined to unite with the youth and more radical elements. His legacy, however, had been sanitized. Russian revolutionary Vladimir Lenin once remarked, during the lifetime of great revolutionaries, the oppressing classes constantly hounded them, received their theories with the most savage malice and the most furious hatred and the most unscrupulous campaigns of lies and slander. After their death, attempts were made to convert them into harmless icons. This applies as well to Dr. King. He felt the need to fight alongside the people, and he did in Memphis, Tennessee in 1968. He was in Memphis to express his adamant support for striking sanitation workers. In that year, Memphis sanitation workers worked without protective gear or uniforms. They had no paid holidays, no vacations, no sick leave, and no health insurance. The use of the term boy by white supervisors was a commonplace. They rang the bell to call employees like animals onto trucks. Eating and washing areas were completely segregated. compensation was $1.04 an hour. Under the pretext of violence initiated by rally participants, Memphis police attacked the workers' demonstration march on March 28th. Tear gas, nightsticks, and mass arrests were the order of the day. King wondered whether civil disobedience tactics of the previous era would be sufficient to win the struggle against these injustices. The National Guard was given ultimate authority, and Memphis became a police state with a 7 p.m. curfew. Dr. King's political development and role in this struggle were preempted by his assassination in front of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis on April 4th. The next day, President Johnson ordered federal troops to Memphis and charged Undersecretary of Labor James Reynolds with the task of settling the strike. Within 2 weeks, the sanitation workers were formal members of the American Federation of State, Country, and Municipal Employees. Dr. King was dangerous to the political establishment because he started to draw the connection between different struggles and unite them against a common enemy. He became to view racism and capitalism as connected. Racism existed so prevalently in American society because of capitalism. Many lessons can be drawn from that struggle. The power of workers to withhold their labor, the power to strike, proved to be a highly effective weapon. Building unity among workers, the community, and different political groups became an important source of strength. Racism was, as it had been so many times before, whipped up by the bosses and the politicians to a fever pitch to keep workers divided. These are all lessons the capitalist class would like us to forget, together with Dr. King's principled stand for the right of labor to organize. Today, the struggle against racism is taking a new direction. From Ferguson to NYC, a new movement has been brewing against police terror. The growing resistance demands the prosecution and imprisonment of killer cops who constantly kill black and brown bodies with no punishment or accountability. The movement is drawing connections between the overt racism of murdering people from oppressed communities and discriminatory policies such as broken windows and stop and frisk. We need to draw an even bigger conclusion, too. Last week, a report came out saying that starting in 2016, 1 million people would lose their food stamp benefits. The 1 million people include those who have been searching for jobs but have not been hired. The food stamp benefits are cut because the economy is supposedly doing better. But better for who? There are still high rates of unemployment, families are being evicted, and homelessness is still rampant. Fighting to expand social programs is a true way of honoring King's legacy. Obama's executive order provides temporary protection to about 5 million undocumented immigrants out of roughly 12 million undocumented people in this country. Since the beginning of his presidency, his administration had deported over 2 million people, claiming he could not do anything without legislative action. Through the power of organizing and struggle, particularly of young undocumented people, millions of families will no longer be separated. However, this action is not enough. It holds migrants in second-class status in order to further divide working people. While reforms are important, we cannot lose sight of the larger goal, legalization for all immigrants. This is honoring King's legacy. We know who created borders, right? We'll talk about that in a second. The movement against police terror and racism need to link up the low-wage worker struggle. Working people across the country demand a living wage for the work that they do, and we should fight alongside these workers. We should push others to understand that racism is a symptom of a capitalist society that exploits the hardest working people and strips them of their humanity. This is honoring King's legacy. We need to immediately correct those that say Dr. King was anything other than a revolutionary. The voice of Dr. Martin Luther King was a powerful voice, a voice that needed and demanded to be heard, a voice brothers and sisters rejoiced to because they knew the sound of his voice was a dedication to the freedom of his people, our people. Let us remember this leader of the Civil Rights Revolution by talking about what it will take to build the next American Revolution. Thank you.